Today I'm going to talk about contrast filters. What are they and how do they work? Contrast filters are color filters. And by changing the spectrum of the color, affects the wavelength of the light that goes through the filter to the paper on the bottom and can increase or reduce contrast. They go from a 00 all the way to a 5. 5 is quite dark in the purple magenta, and a 0 is just quite a bit of a yellow, and then all of the half steps in between. The plan is this: start with 0 and then do full stops 1, 2, 3, 4 and end with 5 and do one more without a contrast filter at all. The negative I've decided to use is this nice stone gate of a house in the Al-Hafa neighborhood in Salalah. It offers enough variation across the negative to be a very good example of how contrast filters affect the image. First, I'll look at the no filter at all print. I think it's easy to see that this is not where you'd want to be. So knowing this is important. For me, it just tells me no filter is no good. So let's start looking at the ones with filters and how that's going to help me get into the image that I'd want as a final print and how it affects my image across contrast scale. Let's begin at the bottom. This is 0 filter. It's number 0, not as in no filter. This is filter number 0. You can see that the blacks are not black. It is not a fully developed across all of the tones. I have a lot of white, but I do not have any strong black. So areas that are just burnt out, not a lot of detail, or, well, just not a lot of contrast, basically. Up one stop, this is contrast filter 1. I think it's easy to see there is a big difference in the development of the blacks inside that image and a greater tonal scale already being developed. If I compare it with the 0 number filter, it is clear what is happening. Well, this is pretty good, but it's not where I would want it to be across the whole image. Up one more stop to contrast filter grade 2, and I think we can see again a vast improvement in the contrast and the tonal scale and variation, and it is looking pretty good. 2 is the neutral. So you start at 2 and knowing that a 2.5, 3 is going to increase that contrast, while going to a 1.5 or 1 is going to start, right, washing that contrast out. This is a pretty good image. It's pretty dark here though, but it's getting this area here quite nicely. Next up is 3, contrast grade 3 filter. All right, we are seeing some good contrast, but it is getting quite dark in this area. So dark, we're losing some of the detail and the elements that would give it some depth and other characteristics. So from the negative that I have chosen, 3 is already too much contrast in the areas I'm losing the elements I would like to keep. Although the highlights and other areas seem to be doing just fine. After 3, it just goes too far for the negative that I've chosen. I've got 4 and 5. You can see again, it just gets darker and darker. The whites and the highlights become this muddy kind of grayish color, and we're just not getting that scale, the depth of tones that would make an attractive image. So clearly too far. It's good to see it, to actually have a visual reference, but not a place that I'd want to go with my images. Well, that leaves me at the area between a 1 and a 2. And this is actually where I usually begin, is a 1.5 grade filter. I found that the environment that I shoot in and some of the elements that I like to take photos of, a 1.5 is right where I need to be as my start. I want to be able to be somewhere in between these two images where I can balance the blacks a little bit better and still be able to build the highlights and the other softer grayscales in my images. And that's it. That is contrast filters in a very simple way to see it on a print versus just seeing the color and knowing the theory. Theory is important, an understanding of how to be creative and how to manipulate. But for me, that's great, but I also need to see what it does to an image that I already know where or how I would want to develop it. And with these colors, that's how it gets done. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you learned something. The truth is, I learned a lot by doing this. I've never done it before, so incredibly helpful. Please subscribe and like, and stay tuned for my next adventure. Thank you for watching.